Okay, intermittent fasting. What is intermittent fasting? We throw intermittent fasting around, this term around, so much. And I just wanted to leave one video for you all on exactly what it is. So there are 5 things to know about intermittent fasting. First, it's time-restricted eating. So when we say fasting, I think sometimes it gets people all kind of confused. But really, intermittent fasting, all you're saying is you're going to take all the food you eat and you're going to condense it into a very specific time period. And how much you condense that is really up to you. So when we look at intermittent fasting, I want you to translate it in your brain as to time-restricted eating. There is an eating window, or we call compressing your eating window, and there is a fasting window where we're looking at how we can start to elongate your fast. So if you want to do intermittent fasting, you can ask yourself, do I want to go 13 hours without food, leaving 11 hours to eat? Do I want to go 15 hours without food, or 16 hours without food, leaving 8 hours? That's the most common popular intermittent fasting is 16-8. But you get to decide when you decide to intermittent fast. It's a personal journey. You get to decide how are you going to compress that eating window. So that's the first thing. The other thing that we see a lot with intermittent fasting is that oftentimes people refer to it as alternate day fasting. So this is where you don't eat for a complete day, and then the next day you eat, and then the next day you don't eat, and then the next day you eat. There's a very popular research study that was turned into a book years ago called the Every Other Day Diet. And there's incredible evidence that approaching intermittent fasting from that angle is really, really effective. So you can either compress your eating window on a daily basis, leaving a longer period for fasting, or you can just every other day don't eat. And the other one that some people do is what they call 5-2. Which is 5 days a week. They eat as much as they want. They eat whenever they want. And then 2 days a week, they go without food. So that's another really popular intermittent fasting tool. So that's the first thing, is it's time-restricted eating. That's all it is. You determine the time. Second, the most common question I get with intermittent fasting is, well, what do I do in my fasting window? And how do I know if I'm out of my fasting window? So if we have an eating window and we have a fasting window, then anything that raises your blood sugar has now pushed you out of that fasting window. This is why we're such fans of you testing it for yourself, because a lot of times, what pulls you out of a fasting window may not pull me out of it. And I've done a lot of videos on blood sugar tests that you can use around your coffee, around your drinks, to see if they're pulling you out of a fasted state. So the second thing to know with intermittent fasting is what you drink in your fasting window. What you do in that fasting window may pull you out. And so you want to know if you're drinking the right things so you don't get pulled out of the fasted state. Third thing, now that you've got compressed your eating window, you're thinking about what you're drinking in your fasting window, what exactly is happening? And here's the big thing that I want to point out. Is that as you are going into this intermittent fasting state, what you're doing is you're switching over into fat burner mode. Once you're in fat burner mode, that switch usually takes 8 to 13 hours. So this is why we usually say the first step to intermittent fasting is 13 hours. But then once you're over here, think of it like somebody's opened a door of incredible chemicals in your body that are going to start working miracles for you. So 13 to 15 hours, you're going to get a ton of growth hormone that will slow the aging process down. You might get some ketones that are going to go up and kill hunger. 17 hours, we start stimulating autophagy. 24 hours intermittent fasting, we're now at our repairing our gut. 36 hours, we're burning fat. 48, resetting dopamine. And 72, resetting your whole immune system. So you choose how much healing do you want to occur? So intermittent fasting can also be used as this term to say, I'm going to dive into some of these deeper fasts intermittently, temporarily, and then do them to accelerate healing, like a 3-day water fast or like a 48-hour dopamine reset fast. Those are, you go in, You create a healing effect, but they're not to be used all the time. They're meant to be used intermittently. Okay, fourth one is how often should you intermittent fast? So, the 13 to 15 hours, most of us are doing this every day. I've taught a lot of variation on here, but if you're new to intermittent fasting, the most important is that you learn to do this compressed, time-restricted eating every day. So start thinking about your food differently. You're thinking about eating windows and fasting windows, and you can do intermittent fasting every single day. I have variations of that. Women and their cycle, we've talked about that on this channel. 5-1-1 is my typical, where you 1 day a week you don't intermittent fast. So we've talked about that here. And then the last thing is, how do you measure intermittent fasting success? This is really important. Like, what's your success for this new way of eating and this new time compressing your eating window? And I think that's a personal journey. Again, we've got to look at, what are you trying to achieve? So if you're trying to lose weight, the more you intermittent fast, the more weight will come off because you're getting energy from the fat burning system. But then if you're trying to repair neurons in the brain, you might have to intermittent fast a little longer. If you want to get gut repair, you might have to do more 24 hours of intermittent fasting, throw some of those in there to repair your gut. So again, the reason I want to put this video out is because this term gets thrown around and there's a lot of variations. So just think of it as time-restricted eating. And then what you do in your fasting window matters, what you drink specifically. And then now, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And that's where you can start to become flexible with this tool. So again, I just want to remind you that intermittent fasting means intermittent. We don't do it all the time, but we do it quite often to create this healing effect in the body.
Okay, check this out. I have a free fasting guide for you all. It's free, and it's going to teach you all the basics of fasting. It's going to teach you how to kill hunger when you fast, which is really cool, and it's going to show you how to break your fast, among many other things. All you got to do is click on this link right here and enjoy.
Okay, intermittent fasting and brain health. This is really important because a lot of people come to intermittent fasting because they want to lose weight. And yes, there's a lot of great things that can happen in the weight loss world with intermittent fasting. But what I really want to point out is that there are 5 changes that will happen to your brain as you start to intermittent fast more and more. Here are the 5. 1, the ketone. We love the ketone. When we start to make that switch over from sugar burner to fat burner, how we know we're in fat burner mode is when the body makes ketones. Ketones not only go up into the brain and kill hunger, which is amazing, right? That makes us able to intermittent fast a little longer, but they also will go up into the brain and they will start to repair neurons. So neurons are like, think of them as highways of information. So it's what's sending information across from neuron to neuron to neuron so that you can think clearly. You've got trillions of neurons in your brain. So each time you switch over and you get ketones, what ends up happening is you start to repair these neurons so they work better, they carry better information, they don't leave you in that place of brain fog or memory loss. One of the most important things you can do to overcome memory loss and brain fog is to get more ketones. So number 1 is ketones. Okay, number 2, what intermittent fasting does is it stimulates autophagy. Now remember, intermittent fasting is this general term that's often used for all kinds of different length fasts. But if you go 17 hours in a fasted state, you are pretty much guaranteed to be stimulating autophagy. And autophagy is the cell's ability to clean its act up. We can think of it as self-detox, we can think of it as self-eating, but really when we're using intermittent fasting for brain health, when we dip into that 17 hours of fasting or longer, what we're doing is we are helping repair these neurons so they can start to work more efficiently. If we look at something like dementia and Alzheimer's, that's where these neurons are shriveling up and they stop sending information. So when we apply intermittent fasting to our brain health, we can actually get into this state of autophagy. We clean those neurons up, and now they start working for you. And again, not against you. So second one is autophagy. Okay, third one's legitimately my favorite, which is BDNF. BDNF is brain-derived neurotropic factor. It is fertilizer. Think of it like Miracle Grow for your brain. There is great clinical evidence that people who are depressed have low BDNF. And there is great clinical evidence showing that when you stimulate BDNF, you start to grow new neurons, specifically in the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that helps you achieve goals, gives you hope and possibility. We like the prefrontal cortex. So we want baby neurons there. We don't always want them in the amygdala that tells us fear. So BDNF, when we start to fast, and now there are a lot of different styles of intermittent fasting that will increase BDNF. One of the most common ones is intermittent dry fasting, where you're going 12 hours without food or water. That really upregulates BDNF and will get your brain new baby neurons and get you thinking more clearly and expanding your brain's ability for cognition to hold in information. Okay, fourth thing that intermittent fasting, it doesn't stop there. This is why I flipping love intermittent fasting. Is the fourth thing is that you, as ketones are going to go up as you intermittent fast, you're going to get some GABA. We love GABA. GABA is the neurotransmitter that calms us and chills us out, which is why when you talk to a lot of fasters, they'll tell you, gosh, you know what? When I fast, I feel more at ease. Well, that's actually, there's some chemical truth to that. It's because you're getting more GABA, and GABA will calm your brain. So yay for that and intermittent fasting. Fifth thing, this is maybe my favorite. I know I keep saying that, but literally I'm a dopamine addict for sure. And intermittent fasting, what it does is it can reset dopamine pathways. Now, remember, the way I like to use the term intermittent fasting is we're just time-restricted eating. So when we want to reset dopamine pathways, oftentimes we have to go into these longer intermittent fasts, like 48 hours of fasting. There's great clinical evidence showing that a 48-hour fast will not only reset the dopamine pathways, but open up more D2 receptor sites. That's dopamine receptor sites that will allow more dopamine to go into the neuron and into the cells so that you experience more joy. So 5 ridiculous things. I mean, this is free, you guys. Like, this is in your body. It is free. So all you've got to do is start to experiment with compressing your eating window and elongating your fasting window. And you can get these 5 chemical changes in your body without spending a dime, without having to take a supplement. It's in you. That's what you're capable of. And that's why I love intermittent fasting.
Okay, are you fasting and you're still not losing weight? Check out this video because you might be missing a key part of your fasting experience that's gonna unlock weight loss. So if you think about it, all the humans that emerged out of that time have the gene that allows us to go without food. And that gene, they believe, is in all of us today.